Welcome to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partners, Kevin Stone and Adam Kurkjian. And I know we're coming to you a little later than usual tonight. We had some technical stuff, I should say, to work through. We worked through it. So here we are. Gentlemen, how are you on this week one Monday evening, whatever we're going to call it? But, we talk about this all the time. The football season's here now. College officially kicks off this week. The high school football season next week. Patriots next week. We're immersed in this whole thing now, fellas.
Yeah, doing well. Ready for more.
Doing good. First time we've all been together in a while, right?
Yeah, it's good to get the band back together. And as always, we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. Give our good friend Herb Devine a call at 781-254-2846 or shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, Herb has the knowledge that you need from a loan officer that can help you get into the right program to help you purchase your first home or your next home. If you are currently in the real estate market and you're looking for someone with know-how, experience, and someone who can get a deal done, Herb Devine is that guy. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846, or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, gentlemen, I think it's fair to say we start every show with the Patriots. It's 95% of the shows on a week-to-week basis. We start with the Patriots. I think it would be putting it mildly to call what's going on right now in Foxborough a debacle, because it is a debacle with this whole quarterback situation. I was on with our good friend John Lyons earlier this evening on WEI, and we talked about the fact that he asked me if I thought this whole thing had been mismanaged. And my answer to that was yes. I think that this whole thing has been mismanaged from day one. From the moment they drafted the kid, I think what they were going to do with him privately and what they're telling people publicly has been mismanaged. We all kind of felt that, you know what, he needs to sit, he needs to develop, he needs to grow up, if you will, and develop into an NFL quarterback. He can't play right away. We all universally agreed with that. And at first, the Patriots pretty much said the same thing. And then all of a sudden, you start hearing about how it's a competition. And then it's Jacoby Brissett's job. But no, it's a competition. But Drake May's not repping with the ones. No one seems to know what the hell is going on right now. I'm not even sure people in that building know what's going on. So let's try to clarify this a little bit. Let's start there. What are your thoughts on this whole thing with Brissett and May and who starts? Do you think it's been mishandled? Is it Brissett and they just don't want to come out and say it because of the way May has performed recently? Or do you think it's really a competition and Drake May has a shot at this?
Well, I think May definitely has a shot. If Jacoby Brissett had come out this preseason and looked really good, then this is a different conversation. But I honestly I don't think Jacoby's played well enough to earn the job, and I think they wanted to, have May sit and watch. And I think in the best scenario, that's what would have happened. But I just feel like Brissett, has turned this into something. The one thing we've all been saying when they came out and said, okay, we want Brissett to start, was the other times, and a lot of quarterbacks that have done this, they've done this with good teams. It's harder to do this, sit the superior player when the team is bad. And I don't think the fans are going to sit there and say, okay, if the team starts out 0-4. And I want May to sit, but if he's obviously the guy, if Drake May is obviously better and it's sort of trending that way, then don't you kind of have to play him? I mean, I'd love for May to sit, but I mean, I'm also thinking play the best guy and play whoever the best guy is. So, I guess I'm fine either way with it. It is just sort of confusing how it's sort of gone about, though. It's been like a real sort of head scratcher. And it's almost like they can't stick to a plan that they like.
Well, but have they mismanaged it?
I would say, yeah. And the other thing that really complicates this is how bad the offensive line has been. And like if it was a competent offensive line, I would really feel I wouldn't really think twice about putting May out there. But you don't want to put him out there and have him get lit up by some defensive line in one of those first 4 games or whatever, whenever it is. I think that's the real part of it that they maybe didn't anticipate.
Yeah, John, to answer your question first, yes, and I thought you had a great point last night on our post game show. If this is your plan, if Jacoby was the plan, come out and say it from day one, and they really didn't. They sort of always left the door open, which they've now screwed themselves because the public has seen this kid perform that much better. You have the head coach this morning saying, "Yeah, Drake is the better quarterback." I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he's openly coming out and saying that, basically
Which is not what he said last night. And
no,
we talked about this.
it was about
Last
12
night he
hours
said that he's the second best quarterback on the team.
Yeah, and about 12 hours later, they watched the film on the way home, and magically, he's now their best quarterback according to Mayo. So yeah, it's completely been mismanaged, and it goes back to what we talked about for the last month or so about him sort of learning on the fly and learning how to deal with the media and the players at the same time. So yes, it's been completely mismanaged. I still go back and forth on whether May should start. He's clearly won the competition, but you're going to get him killed if it continues to look like it did last night. So should he be the starting quarterback? 100%. But now my biggest thing is, do you owe it to the locker room to play him? Like, yes, you didn't think you weren't going to be good. Yes, you probably assumed you were going to have a top 5 pick this year, but these guys are getting paid too. And John, you've said this for weeks. These are grown men who are professionals and they want to win football games. So now you've backed yourself into a corner where you have to play the better guy, at least to save face with the locker room. So, yeah, this is a clusterfuck, a shit show. Sorry for the language, but it really isn't. I'm shocked it's sort of become this way this quickly because I thought, again, we've been at camp. Jacoby's been decent. Like, I thought he actually was better than we all thought he would be. But these last couple weeks, man, he's gone downhill and Drake is sort of overtaken him. So now they're in a brutal spot 2 weeks before the opener.
What's interesting to me is that now Mayo has pivoted and he's talking about when answering questions about the quarterback competition, he's focusing more about the entire process, not just the games and making a decision strictly based on the performance in the preseason games. Now he's talking about what it's been like all offseason, what it was like during OTAs and minicamp, what it's been like during camp, and that all of those things are being used in the evaluation process. That to me tells me that he's on the defensive. And look, I think Gerard's learning a lot of valuable lessons right now. It's very easy early on as a young head coach to put your foot in your mouth. God knows I did it. You covered my teams, Stone. I mean, I don't know if you think I put my foot in my mouth, but I know a few people that think I did. Now, I'm not comparing myself to Mayo in the situation he's in, but being a head coach is being a head coach. And so I'm just injecting some life experience into this. But my point is, it's going to take him some time to figure it out. He's got to realize that, yes, it's great to be transparent and refreshing, but there's some merit to also having a Bill Belichick in you when it comes to dealing with the media, and less is more, and don't say as much. Don't put yourself in a corner. Don't incriminate yourself. He's done that here. This has been wholeheartedly mismanaged, in my opinion. And I think they would have done themselves a lot of favors if at some point this summer they named Brissett the starter and they put an end to this. And even if May played well, you could say that's great. Drake played well. We're very happy with where he is. He might even be ahead of schedule. But the bottom line is right now, given where we're at, until we bring along our supporting cast to get to the level that he's at or that he could get to, we don't think that he can play right now. We want to continue to see him develop. Now, that might not be what the media wants to hear. That might not be what the fans want to hear. And I'm sure it's not what the fans want to hear. But at the end of the day, you're painting a realistic picture while at the same time protecting yourself and the organization. That hasn't been the case. I mean, we've gotten at the night of the draft, he's talking about him competing. And then it's about development. And then Jacoby's our guy. And then it's about competing. And then it's about development. And then Van Pelt last week essentially says Jacoby is our guy. So now none of them are on the same page. Wolf, Van Pelt, and Mayo are not on the same page. And that's the other problem here. All we heard all offseason was about this collaborative effort, that the Patriots are now about collaboration. Collaboration became the organizational buzzword. And Lord knows we live in a time now where people love buzzwords. They love committees. They love buzzwords. They love data. They love research. And you see it in politics all the time, right? Well, what are you talking about? This recent study shows, please, wipe your ass with that study. At the end of the day, what I think it comes down to is, first and foremost, they need to get on the same page. The second thing is they need to make a decision here. And the third thing is they need to stick with it. Now, you mentioned the offensive line. That, to me, would be the number one reason why I'm not playing Drake May week one, or quite frankly, not until I have to. Because that offensive line is a mess. They had 10 penalties last night, including 4 illegal formation penalties. If Chooks Okorafor, I hope he didn't puke when he watched that tape. Because if I were him, I would have. Okay? I mean, how do you line up in the backfield? I know you're trying to gain an advantage because you want to be able to jump set a guy and cut the edge off, but come on, man. You've been in this league long enough. You played at a high enough level of football long enough. You should know better. If it happened one time, fine. But multiple times, not good. And, of course, one of those penalties negated a touchdown. So, again, therein lies the problem. Jacoby Brissett has not looked good. Drake May has outperformed him the last 2 weeks. Last night he outperformed him again. But then to compound things, your offensive line is a sieve, and you were undisciplined as hell. I believe they had, 16 penalties last night? I mean, this is about as bad as it could get right now for Gerard Mayo. I mean, it can get worse if they're losing. But in terms of walking into the regular season, that is not a good way to end the preseason and go into the regular season. They're lucky that they got a couple weeks here to prepare for Cincinnati, but to also clean some of this stuff up. But I'm telling you, if they don't get on the same page first, and they don't name a starter here in the next 12 to 36 hours, I think they're just going to look more and more foolish, and I don't think they're doing themselves any favors. Of course, cutdown day is tomorrow, 4 p.m. We already saw the first wave of cuts. No surprises there. A lot of guys that we thought would get cut. I guess if there was a surpriser, maybe Sam Roberts, somebody who they drafted 3 years ago. They developed, they kept him. Ultimately, he didn't develop enough to keep, so he's gone. They made a bunch of cuts today. They still have to make a bunch more tomorrow. Now, all of the guys that they cut, they can eventually re-sign. The ones they want to re-sign, they can re-sign some of them to the practice squad. Patriots also have the third pick in the waiver order, so they're going to be in a pretty good position to bring outside talent in to fortify certain positions, namely the offensive line. Quick question for you guys. Do you see a scenario tomorrow where we might see a surprise cut? And who do you think could be a surprise cut?
Well, I don't know if this would be a surprise, but a lot of people have been picking for Kayshon Boutte to make the team.
Which would mean Tyquan Thornton's out?
Yeah, right. I think Boutte is somebody a lot of people have mentioned as sort of having a really good preseason, and I think, but I do think I think he gets cut. I think it's tough to, cut a talented receiver on this roster because you need all the good ones you can get. But I think I think he's just sort of a late scratch for them.
So 2 names come to mind for me. One, and John, we talked about this a lot during the Philly game, I believe, the preseason game. I don't think it's going to happen, but Josh Uche, he's had a very odd preseason.
Yeah,
I know
I
and
agree.
they really need him, though, so I don't think it's going to happen. But just the way his preseason has gone, sort of their relationship with Mayo has felt sort of weird. Like, I don't know, I could see it happening, but again, they need him, so I don't think it will. And
He
then
hasn't,
KJ,
by the way, and I don't want to read too much into this.
yeah,
I don't know if you've noticed it, but he also he doesn't come across as being happy. He's kind of an aloof
no,
guy to begin with. He's kind of quiet and keeps to himself. You do see that other side of him though, where he can be funny and he can be someone who embraces people. But he also seems down to me. Usually, in the couple of years that I've covered him, I've always perceived him to be very businesslike and focused. But this year, I just get the sense that he's down.
yeah, no, it's weird because we've talked to Don Brown about him for a couple years now, and he's always spoken glowingly of him from his time at Michigan. And then I obviously did the story with him about his relationship with Chris Merritt during training camp, and he seemed happy. That was what, week 1 or week 2, so maybe stuff could have gone downhill. One other name, and I know they paid him, and again, this probably won't happen, but I wouldn't be completely surprised. Is KJ Osborne? I think he's had a pretty bad camp. He had a bad drop last night. He had the would-be touchdown, but had a bad drop from Jacoby early on in that series. I just don't think he's been all that great, and I personally want to see Booty make the team. So again, they need a veteran body in that room, so it probably won't happen. But I wouldn't be totally shocked if it did.
It could potentially happen if Kendrick Bourne were healthy, but with Bourne hurting, probably
Yeah.
he's going to miss at least half the season. I think it's one of those things where, safe to say, I think KJ Osborne probably makes the team on veteran status alone. For me, I think it's Tyquan Thornton. I think that the hourglass of time is running out on him. I think that this camp was vitally important for him in terms of making this football team, and I don't think he's done nearly enough to make this team. And it's not all his fault, but I think we're at a crossroads here with Tyquan Thornton. And I think it's probably better for him to get a fresh start elsewhere. And I think it's probably good for them to keep a Kayshon Boutte and see what you have in him and try to develop him. Because I just don't think that you've gotten enough out of Thornton. And at this point, you're probably at a point in his time here where you could be more comfortable moving on. So for me, I think he's the big upset. I think he's the guy that's probably the one to keep an eye on. If I had another one, I mean, based on what happened last night, Nick Leverett's another guy that if I were him, I'd feel like the scene in Major League where they're all waiting around to see if they're going to get the notice in their locker. I mean, I'd have that feeling if I were him. I think last night, despite the fact that he's a veteran in the league and he's vital in that he can play guard and center and he's a swing guy, I don't think he helped himself last night. So he's another guy that could be a potential surprise cut. Another guy, and I don't think he'd be a surprise, is Chad Ryland. I think he's done. I think he's going to be one and done. I would suspect Joey Sly is going to win the kicking job.
Yeah. What about Antonio Maffi? That's a name that comes to mind as well.
Yeah. No, I think Antonio Maffi, I thought of that today too. I think Antonio Maffi is definitely a guy that I think is probably on the outside looking in. I think that So and Andrews have upside. I thought from those three guys, I thought that So and Andrews had the most upside. I think for Maffi, he was an overachiever. I think he gave you about as much as he could give you last year, but I think you maxed him out. I don't see him making this team. And when you look at where they're at now, I will say this: I could see them cutting him and bringing him back on the practice squad. That's what I think ultimately happens with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see him making the team at least tomorrow. I think he ends up back here. Real quick, couple of things before we wrap up the Patriots and move on to college. Thoughts on Bailey Zappi? I mean, I think he's done. He would be another guy I would put on this list. I think he gets cut tomorrow. We talked about this last night. Not only do I think he gets cut, but I don't think he comes back here. I think he's going to have some other opportunities, and I do think he's going to ultimately choose to move on. I don't like the way last night was handled. I thought they did him dirty, as today's generation would say. I thought he deserved to play a quarter last night, and if nothing else, he deserved to have the opportunity to showcase himself for other teams. The fact that they didn't give him that opportunity and only played him the last 2 minutes of the game, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, John, it's not just last night. It's all camp. They've treated him like crap all of training camp. And now, look, I know, developing the two rookies is most important. And Joe Milton is flashy. But for lack of a better term, they've wasted Zappy's time all summer. At least in my opinion.
And here's the thing, not to cut you off, Kevin, he deserves better. I mean, he's 4-4 in the last 2 years as a starter for the Patriots. And as I said during the show last night, that's exactly what you want out of your backup quarterback. You just need him to keep you in games and give you a chance to win. And he's done exactly that. And given the situation right now with Brissett and his struggles and this potential injury, I want to keep Joe Milton too. But I'm not so sure you can cut Bailey Zappi right now. I mean, I think they kind of need him, but something tells me they're going to move on from him.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, just to finish up, not only on the field, but the way he's handled everything off the field. He could have been a real shit stirrer last year. And again, I know he's a young kid and he probably never was going to be, but he could have been an issue in that locker room if he really wanted to be, given the entire dynamic with Mac, and he wasn't. He always dealt with us very professionally. This summer, he's done it again. So just overall, they've treated him very poorly this camp. And John, you said it. I don't think there's any way he comes back if he has other offers elsewhere. I think he's done with this place.
Yeah, I think so too. And I feel like, he got out there and, played some games and all that, and people were judging him against starter level NFL quarterbacks, when reality is you just judge him as a backup. And if you're judging him as a backup, he's a really good one. Like he's always reliable. There's never any thought about him not understanding the playbook. And he's won games in the NFL. So I think if he wants to go somewhere else, he could do well. He's not a starter in this league, but starters get hurt. And if you can have somebody like Bailey Zappi come in and play to the caliber he's capable of, he can make a nice living off it.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I think he's going to have more of a market now if they cut him than he did last summer, where he ultimately chose to come back. But this is a different situation now. I mean, I think he recognizes he doesn't have a future here. So why come back to this situation? But I agree. I don't think it's fair the way he was treated. But again, that's, it's unfortunately par for the course in professional sports. It is a business. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show, presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by Kevin Stone and Adam Kurkjian. Just a reminder, if you are in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home, or buy your first home, give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. Or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, Herb has the knowledge and the know-how to help you navigate through the real estate process and get into your next home. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. So give him a call or email him today. I promise you, you won't regret it. I'm a realtor myself. Herb is one of the best in the business, period. Whether it be agents, lawyers, loan officers, you name it, he's one of the best, one of the most reputable dudes you will meet in this business. I can't stress it enough. Please feel free to give him a call or shoot him an email today if you are ready to move into your next home. All right, let's talk some college football here. Of course, we just completed week 0. Week 1 kicks off this weekend. Of course, we're going to have full previews of all the local games for this weekend. We've got a bunch of season previews up on anyfootballjournal.com right now. On Thursday, we'll be putting out our preseason all D1 New England team as well, or teams, I should say, and our honorable mention. So we've got plenty of great college content coming up, but we've got some intriguing matchups here to open the weekend, and we're just going to run through them all real quick, and I want to get your thoughts here, fellas. We're going to start with a local matchup, Holy Cross at URI. That game will take place on Saturday night at 7 p.m. from Meade Stadium in Kingston. Our Tony Catalina is going to be there for that one. Dan Curran, first game as a head coach at Holy Cross. Love their schedule this year. They're playing URI, UNH, Bryant, heavy local flavor. I love that. I think that this is going to be an interesting matchup, a very even matchup in many ways. When you look at what both of these programs have lost, a lot of retooling there. I think this is going to be a fun game, but I think it's going to be a physical, downhill, run the football, stop the run type of game. Look, Dan Curran, Pat Murphy, I expect them to score points, but it's week one. I could see this being more of a defensive game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. What are your thoughts on that one?
I agree. I kind of feel like this is your typical defenses ahead of the offenses type game in this early stage. I mean, at the very least, I don't expect the offenses to be hitting on all cylinders in this week. It's going to be a physical game. I'm not sure who I like in it yet, but I think it's going to be a great showdown. It'll be a good game for Dan Curran to get started. These are two really good teams, and teams that are going to be there at the end of the season too.
So you guys are probably right in terms of how the game plays out, but I can't shake the feeling of a shootout. Just my immediate thoughts on this are, Holy Cross's quarterback, Joe Pazanski, he's been in the system for 5 years. For whatever reason, I feel like this offense is ready to hit the ground running. It might be because I saw him on a camp visit, last week. Jordan Fuller is back. Their receiver room is still deep with Shipman and Shorter kind of leading the way. Tight ends, we've all seen a Dan Curran offense at Merrimack. He loves to use the tight ends, something that Holy Cross has not done in a few years. So you guys are probably right. It'll probably be low scoring, but in my mind, I can't shake the feeling of a shootout. But it's a huge jumping off point for both these teams. Both teams still have high expectations, even though they've both lost, some pretty big pieces. So a big jumping off point for both teams. I think it's a coin flip game. I'm going to lean Holy Cross, but this might be the best game of the weekend, at least for us locally.
Yeah, and for URI, I mean, again, we keep talking about knocking down the old door and breaking through in the CAA, and Jim Fleming has done a fantastic job getting the program to a place where they're a yearly contender now. I really like this football team. They did lose a lot, but when I was down there a couple of weeks ago, I love the quarterback duo of Hunter Helms and Devin Farrell, and both of them are going to play on Saturday. Coach Fleming came out and said that today. Both are going to play. I really like that duo. And then I love their running back room. I mean, they have 5 backs. They have 5 guys that can touch the ball and be productive. So it's not going to be, 1 week it could be Malik Grant. The next week it could be Deion Silas. The following week it could be Gabe Sloat, Carson Harwood, Jaden Griffin. They have a lot of talent in that running back room. And don't forget about Marquise Buchanan, who I think is the best wide receiver, FCS wide receiver in New England. And I would put him on par with our FBS programs in the region too. I think he can play for all 3 of the FBS programs in New England. I think he can play for BC. I think he can play for UConn, and I certainly think he can play for UMass. I think Marquise Buchanan is one of the best playmakers in New England. So this is going to be a fantastic matchup. It's going to come down to the defenses. I do think URI has a slight edge there, but I definitely think this is going to be one of those games to watch. We are going to go backwards here. We're going to go to Thursday night. UNH kicks off their season down at the Bounce House when they travel to Central Florida. And look, Ricky Santos talked about this today. He was asked about the program's previous success against FBS schools. And Ricky, being Ricky, says, well, these guys haven't beaten an FBS program. And he's right. So what you did 10 years ago, 12 years ago, really means nothing because these guys weren't a part of the program. They don't know what that's like. I think that this is an interesting game. Now, look, on paper, UNH has their hands full. They're going up against an offense, Gus Malzahn, explosive. They're going to make big plays. Then they're going up against a defense that's going to bring pressure from all over the yard. But one thing we know about UNH, they're well coached, and I think that this is a game, while I don't see them winning it, I can see them being competitive for a quarter to a half and sticking around and making it interesting.
I agree with
Yeah.
you. And, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say the other thing that Ricky talked about in that same answer, John, is his message to the team, and it's kind of loose, have some fun, and all the pressure is on UCF, and he's right. The entire country doesn't expect them to even sniff this game. So if nothing else, you can go down there and play loose. And if anybody can sort of get his guys to believe in the message, it's Ricky. So the other thing with UNH too is their quarterback, Ricky pointed out, I believe it's Seth Morgan, if I'm not pronouncing it wrong. Over 9,000 yards of offense with 2 different schools. So this kid's played in some pretty big games and produced. I wouldn't be surprised if they hang around for at least a half or so.
Yeah, I feel like, look, I think UCF is one of the best teams anybody is playing from around here in their schedules. So it's a tall task. But, I think if you go back to last year in their FBS game that year, I mean, that was a shootout down to the wire game. And I think, UNH, they're a tough program. They're tough. They're not going to go intimidated down there. They think they can play with anybody. So I agree with you guys. I think that for a half, maybe 3 quarters, they keep this with a score or two, and maybe find a way to pull it out in the end. Now, again, UCF's a very good team, and I think they're probably going to win. But I don't think UNH is going to go down there and get embarrassed.
No, I don't think they will either. I think that they will compete. I think ultimately the cream rises. Central Florida is the more talented team. That'll ultimately be the difference. Another Thursday night matchup is Central Connecticut State. Coach Lechtenberg beefed up their schedule this offseason. They open at Central Michigan, which, of course, UNH has played at Central Michigan a couple times in recent years. It's a good challenge for the Blue Devils. Look, again, another situation where if you're Central Connecticut State, it's really about being competitive and playing with maximum effort for 4 quarters. You're not going to go out there if you're Coach Lechtenberg and the staff and say to your players, hey, listen, guys, let's go up there, get rolled, and call it a day. Okay, you're going to talk about competition, competing, giving yourself a chance, generating breaks for yourself. You're going to say all of those things, but the reality is they're not going to win this football game more than likely. So what it's about is it's more about getting off to a good start, taking care of the football, being methodical on offense, executing, and then on defense, being opportunistic. I think if they can do that, they can hang around. But I think it's a tall task. I think Central Connecticut State is the type of school that's going to eventually get those transfers where they're going to be able to be more competitive in games like this. But they're not there right now in this rebuild. That a game like this, in reality, probably should have been played a couple years ago. But we had Coach Lechtenberg on this offseason, and he basically said, look, we need to build the profile of this program, and the way we're going to do that is to play better competition. Why wait? Let's do it now.
I think that a lot of times in games like these, it's nothing more than just depth taking over time. So like you see so often, a lot of times these FCS teams will come out fast and maybe get up by a score or two, and you start to think the upset's going to be there. But the more that the depth takes over, and like the linemen they roll out on you, I think this is going to be one of those games. I can see Central Connecticut State making a game of it early, but depth-wise, Central Michigan's got them.
And I think it's important to note here, this is also the same Central Connecticut State program that 3 years ago went down and played at Miami. So this is not a program, regardless of where they're at. This has always been a program, specifically in recent years, that's willing to play FBS competition. Yeah, they're going to get the paycheck, but they want to build a program. And the way you do it is by upping the ante. And I think that's the whole intention here.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned the interview we had with Coach. I thought you could really kind of sense that culture shift in just how much he was looking forward to sort of turning the page for the program. This is one of those kind of games where you don't have to win, but you can kind of make a statement. We talked a lot last year, or maybe 2 years ago, about the Maine game here at BC. For Maine, that was sort of a stepping stone into hopefully something different this year. this could kind of be that game for CCSU. Well, you don't win, but people kind of say, oh, you can see something there. And we talk about, these FCS programs playing these higher schools as well for recruiting. Maybe it opens some eyes for other kids that might want to go there. So you don't have to win this game, but have a good showing and sort of get off on the right foot. I think that's the main goal here.
Speaking of Maine, they host Colgate on Friday night in their season opener and home opener. Coach Jordan Stevens today talked about the fact that that'll be the first day that the students are back on campus. So the place will be buzzing. They expect a big crowd there. This is going to be a tough game for the Black Bears. Colgate last year finished their season. They went 6-1 in their last 7 games. That's a good program out of the Patriot League. This is going to be a tough opener for Maine. Here's the thing with Maine. I think when you look at the composition of this roster, I love their skill group. One of the best skill groups in the CAA, top to bottom. You got to figure out what you have at quarterback. It appears that Mercer transfer Carter Peavy is going to be the guy there. But if Peavy plays well and they can find a way to develop their running game, skill-wise, Cooper Heisey at tight end, Joe Gillette at wide receiver, Montego Moss, they've got guys on the perimeter that can make plays. They can get some good quarterback play. They can find a way to run the football, which is a staple of Maine football. They're always going to want to play physical. Offensive line has 3 starters returning. A couple of impact transfers have come in. All of a sudden now, this Maine football team could really take a big step this year in their development. This is a tough opener, but I do think that if they can find a way to beat this Colgate team, I think it sets them up to be in a position where it could be a springboard for the rest of their season.
Yeah, I think it's important for them to win this game. I don't think Colgate's a bad team at all, but if Maine,
no, you can't brush them off. I'm telling
right? No,
you can't do it.
Yeah,
you're doing it at your own risk.
I just want to get rid of some plaque. So I think
don't give them any plaque. They play hard.
Don't give them any plaque. Yeah, they got to plaque the box. So I'm done. But I think
Stone's about to commit seppuku here in about 30 seconds.
This is a game that Maine has to win, I think, because after this season they just had, you want to get off to a good start. You want to get some momentum from the offseason. And I don't know what would happen if they lost this game. That would just be a tough way to start. So I think this is a very important game for Maine. I think they do win. I think they're the better team here. But again, this is not just a terrible team there, but they're playing a good team. And I think it'll be a competitive game, like a 27-24 type.
Yeah, no. Speaking of like a culture shift, this is a game you have to win at home if you're Maine. If you are sort of taking that next step.
Well, that is their main objective.
Correct. But look, this Colgate team, if I remember right, they gave BC problems when they came up here. I think it was 2 years ago. So they're a decent program. It's not going to be easy, but yeah, Maine can't lose this game. One stat that sort of stood out to me during Stevens' press conference today, someone asked him a question about big plays, and I think it was they gave up 107 plays of 20 yards or more last year.
Yeah.
Can't happen. That's brutal. So if they can limit big plays and sort of keep the offense in it until this new offense sort of gets going, then yeah, they should be in every game this year. But those big plays that regularly can't happen all year. Otherwise, we'll be talking about the same sort of program we have been the last few years.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is a big one. They got to win this one. And again, like I said, I think this is a tone setter for them. It sets the table. And this is a program that needs to take meaningful steps this year. They're in many ways they're in the same boat as UMass. I think that the administration, the alumni, they want to see this program take meaningful steps. I think they have the right guy at the helm to do it. I think Jordan is first of all as good as it gets as a person. He's just a fantastic dude. But I think he played there. He's from Maine. It means something to him. He's not going anywhere. This is his job. This is where he wants to be. That's the kind of guy you give ample time to get a program going. I think he has it, but I do think that there's this internal pressure, but I also think there's some external pressure there now to take that next step and show some growth in year 3 for Coach Stevens. Next up, we have Bryant in their first game in the CAA. They will travel to Delaware to take on a CAA perennial power in the Blue Hens. Of course, this is the one and only meeting between the two teams. Delaware will make the jump up to FBS next year, which I thought for years they should make this move. I'm glad that they're doing it. Ryan Carty, former UNH assistant, is the head coach at Delaware. Look, I think this is going to be a tough game. And talking to people around the Bryant program, they openly said to me, Delaware on tape is as good as, in many ways, as UNLV was last year, or even FIU a couple years ago. So that's high praise. I mean, those are FBS programs. This is an FCS program, but it speaks to the job that Coach Carty and his staff have done recruiting that program. Now, Delaware is also a program rich in history and tradition. I'm sensing a theme here, but I think if you're Chris Merritt and this Bryant program, it seems like we're repeating ourselves tonight, but you just want to go down there and compete. One thing I will say is Bryant went 6-5 last year. They very easily could have won at least another 3 games. So this is a team that gives good teams fits. I have a feeling that this game's going to be closer than people think.
Bryant has played well against some of these other teams in the past. I feel like Delaware, they had a great season last year. They're traditional power, Delaware. They're not just every other year. It seems like Delaware has a good team every year. I always wish they'd go back to running the wing tee, which was awesome when they did. But
I grew up in that system. Tubby Raymond, Greg Perry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I love it when a high school team runs it really well. So I think, again, you could look at it the way a lot of these teams are looking at the FBS opponents. Nobody thinks we can win. That's what Bryant's got to be saying. Nobody thinks we can win. We can play loose. We can, just sort of make this a game when they don't want us to. So I think, again, Bryant can hang around it. I wouldn't say Delaware's going to blow them out, but I think Delaware's definitely the favorite, and so it'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
Bryant lost either 4 or 5 one-possession games last year, and I think 4 games in overtime. So they play everybody tough. I'm with you guys. I think it's a close game. Delaware probably wins, but the other thing Chris Merritt talked about today that people need to remember, almost half of their team is brand new.
Yeah.
They've lost a ton of kids.
I think it's more 60% of their team is brand new.
And obviously you're replacing Zevi Eckhouse as well.
Which is huge.
Huge. But on the other side of that, we've all, experienced that sort of what Chris Merritt does for a program. He's going to have the kids ready to go, and they'll play tough. I do think it might be a tough season for them. Again, just going back to integrating so many new kids into this program. But look, we've talked about this before. The support behind them from the school is, as strong as anyone locally that we cover. So they're on the rise. It might be a sort of a slower year, but again, another stepping stone type game. And if they can somehow pull it off, then look out. But they'll be ready to go. They'll play tough. I'd be surprised if Delaware loses, though.
I'm looking forward to seeing Jared Guest play, the Coastal Carolina transfer.
Yeah.
I think he was a tremendous pickup for them in the portal. I love that Merritt named him the starter early, didn't waste time with. And they have a very talented quarterback room. They got a couple of good young quarterbacks that they really like. But I think at the end of the day, it was smart on his part to name him the starter out of the gate. He had a strong spring, earned it. He's the guy. Don't waste any time. Merritt did that at CAA Media Days. I think the other thing here is that, you mentioned the investment in the program. If you get a chance to go down there, I mean, they're building a whole new facility on the other side that's going to end up being football offices and the home side stands. The Rhode Island professional soccer team plays their home games there, so they added a new section of stands. The school is lobbying the team to leave them there so that they can keep them. And this is going to be one of the best facilities in New England. They already have an indoor. They're one of, the BC, Holy Cross, Bryant, and UConn, I believe, are the only programs in that we cover that have indoor facilities. So they're in a really good spot, and to your point, they're just going to keep building. Next up, we have Delaware State at Sacred Heart. Delaware State opened their season at Hawaii this past weekend, losing 35-14. They will be visiting the Pios on Saturday evening at 6 p.m. It's been a tough 2 years for Mark Knopfler's squad. They had some issues on the coaching staff a couple of years ago. They literally lost their 4 best players in the portal this offseason. Arsheen Giles went to UMass. Malik Grant, Carson Primrose went to URI. They lost a lot of talent to local schools, in essence. But they're in a place now where I think the program is ready to move on and ready to take another step. A lot of new faces, but I think they're no longer in the NEC, which I think is important. Of course, it was announced last week that on November 16th, they will be playing Merrimack for the Yankee Conference Trophy, which I don't know why it was named that. I love the idea. Still trying to figure out what the connection is. But I think that for me, Sacred Heart's going to surprise people. They're an independent. They're going to play a strong schedule as always. They're going to lean on their defense. Whenever Sacred Heart has been good, especially through the years in the NEC, I mean, they won 4 NEC titles in the last 15 years. Whenever they've been good, it's been on the strength of their defense. Their defense is going to be a strong point again. I think this is a tough game for them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they upset Delaware State and got their season off to a good start.
Yeah, I sort of don't know what to expect out of this one. I think both teams are sort of up in the air, but again, I feel like they have a chance to sort of jump out and have a good start to the season. The rest of their schedule is interesting. I mean, they play Stonehill. I think that's an interesting game. I think they play St. Anselm. So
they have them next week.
Yeah, so it's an interesting. You want to get off to a good start, but I think they'll still be. So I think they'll be like a flirting with 500 or better over the course of the season.
So I probably shouldn't admit this, but I watched the Hawaii game the other night, betting on it. So I got to see them a little bit. There's some skill guys there, but I feel like Sacred Heart's in the same boat as CCSU. Sort of trying to turn the page, and this would be one of those again, stepping stone games. So I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it off. I wasn't that impressed with Delaware State. Now, again, it's against a much better Hawaii team, but again, you mentioned, John, just the way they're sort of trying to move on and sort of reshape the culture. It's crazy to think that back in 2021, they're a late Jalen Coker miracle touchdown away from going to the second round of the FCS playoffs. So
they were the dominant program in the NEC the last few years. I mean, people forget the job that Mark Knopfler's done there with that program.
Yeah, and again, I was at that playoff game. They had the lead up until the final 7 seconds of the game. And so again, they were that close to, who knows what this program looks like if they make a run that year. But I have a feeling they might win this game on this weekend.
And I mentioned Merrimack. Merrimack opens on Saturday as well. They are going to be playing an FBS opponent as they travel out to Air Force to take on the Air Force Academy. And of course, Coach Giannetti in his first year replacing Dan Curran. Typical Merrimack team. They're going to be physical offensively, run the football. Giannetti's been the defensive coordinator. He's been there for a long time. They have a certain style that they like to play defensively. Now, I think they're going to have their hands full with Air Force's triple option offense. Troy Calhoun and that staff have been there a long time. They do a great job of blending the option with some spread option concepts. So I do think that Merrimack's defense is going to have their hands full. This game could end up being about 2.5 hours between the two teams running the football, trying to shorten the thing. But I think when you look at this game on paper, I think, again, this isn't about – it's about – if you're Merrimack, it's about being competitive and taking your brand nationally here. This is what it's all about. They made the move to the MAC, as did Sacred Heart for these other sports. But as an independent in football, you now can play a better schedule. I think this is a great opportunity for Merrimack to go out there, compete, and take their program nationally.
I think with anytime you face the option, you focus first on stopping that dive, and then worry about the outside stuff later. But I think with Merrimack, I feel like it's sort of continuing off of what Dan Curran started there in terms of just have a tough nose, just have a tough mindset, a hard nosed mindset as a team that's going to, run the ball well, stop the run, and be efficient in the passing game. I think that Merrimack really has a chance. In this game, I don't think I don't think I expect them to win this game. This is a really tough one. Air Force is a good team, but again, for Merrimack, it's about continuing what Dan Curran built and then build off on top of that.
Yeah, for me, it's John. You mentioned it. This is about recruiting. Put a good show on nationally. Look, Dan Curran didn't leave the cupboard bare, but there's some. I don't know if rebuilding is the right word, but there's definitely some retooling that the program needs to do. So curious to see just overall what the operation looks like, especially offensively. They were banged up on offense last year, and it kind of caught up to them down the stretch. But again, you mentioned Cignetti's been there Cignetti's been there for quite some time. It's not like it's an entire, brand new staff. So there should be some continuity there. I expect them to be competitive this season, but I think there's some growing pains in store for sort of this new look or new regime for Merrimack.
And of course, continuing with our college football, I'm going to have to pick it up here a little, pick up the pace here, fellas. Next up, we have UConn at Maryland. Actually, Armand Kidway is going to be there for that game, and he's going to cover it for us. Look, this is a big year for Jim Mora in this program. They still don't have a conference. There's the Big 12 talk this week. There's talk about them potentially joining the Big 12 now in all sports. Football wouldn't join, though, until 2031, which I don't understand. Makes no sense. But the bottom line is this is a big year for this program. They need to have a good season. They have 8 home games, so I think that's going to be good for them. That's going to put them in a position where they can be competitive. But I think at the end of the day, getting off to a good start is paramount. I think that's going to be tough to do, though, against a really, really good Maryland team. Mike Loxley has that program rolling right now.
Yeah, Loxley's an unbelievable recruiter. I mean, a lot of the games that Maryland plays against like more named programs, they show pretty well. If you're UConn and you're insulted by the fact that they wouldn't let your football program on until 2031, well then play well in games like these. You show that you're a better program than people think. Again, I think Maryland's a big favorite in this game, but I do think UConn is not. UConn can compete with these guys, but again, from a talent perspective, I think Maryland's a step ahead.
This is a game you cannot lose 35-10, 35-3, anything like that. This is another big recruiting game. They're trying to do everything the right way. I'm sure you guys saw it today. Their NIL collective is the first in college, I believe, to have the logo on the field at the rent this year. Like, they're trying to do this the right way. Jim Moore is starting to get the support that he's been, sort of, I don't know if requesting is the right word, but lobbying for years now. So UConn's trying to do everything the right way. You can't go out and lay an egg in this first game. You can't do it. So I believe it's a Big Ten network game. It's a national TV audience. Like, you need to at least show up and be competitive in this one. And we talked about last year sort of being the opposite of, sort of how things are supposed to go, making the bowl game the first year and then having that roller coaster season. You don't need to win this game, but you can't get embarrassed on national television.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. Next up, we have Eastern Michigan visiting UMass, another program that needs to have a big year here. This is a big year for Don Brown and this program. They need to take that next step and get into bowl contention. We've talked about this ad nauseum. They play predominantly a MAC schedule this year. Their schedule is wonky. They play a handful of MAC teams, but then they play 3 SEC teams, including a visit from Missouri. It's going to be a fun schedule for us from a coverage standpoint. But nonetheless, this is a big year for Don Brown and this staff. They need to get off to a good start. Eastern Michigan's been a pretty good program in recent years. It's going to be a tough game, but I do think it's a winnable game. Our Ryan Barry's going to be there for that one. UMass needs to get off to a good start.
100% UMass needs to get off to a good start. And they got off to a good start last year. They got hit with injuries and things sort of fell apart on them. So that's why I kind of think this is a good spot for this Eastern Michigan game, because I don't think Eastern Michigan is a great MAC team. Like, they're a good team, but they're not like talent-wise like filled with these great players. They're good players. No, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying this is a game that UMass talent-wise can compete in, and I think that I'll go ahead and make the call. I think UMass wins just like they did last year and opens the season with a bang.
I'll go so far as to call it a must-win game. I know it's September and it's the opener, but look, for years and years we've talked about their fast starts and needing to get off to a good start. This is, I believe, their first home opener, or first time they're opening the season at home since 2018. It's going to be a good crowd, right? Ideally. You would think that people at least go in for the first game instead of just tailgating, but I think it's a must-win game. This is year, 4 or 5 for Dawn? Like, if they're what we think they are, or what they think they should be, 4, whatever, 3, whatever. Either way, they're at the point where this is a game you need to win at home. You can't lose this game at home to start the season. You just can't.
No, I agree. But I do think it's going to be a tough game for them. But I agree. You can't lose this one. They need this one. Early momentum is going to be key for them. And finally, of course, you have Labor Day night, Monday night, Boston College visiting Florida State. Florida State, of course, coming off a 24-21 upset loss to Georgia Tech on Saturday in Ireland. It's the debut of Bill O'Brien. Stone, you've been living there. You've been O'Brien's roommate. Thoughts? I mean, can they make Florida State go 0-2 here? I mean, is it possible? Can they follow up another loss for them?
So look, I didn't see the game. I was at practice, but everything I saw, read, and heard afterwards, Georgia Tech had their way running the football, both with the quarterback and the running backs. It's one of BC's best strengths, I think, is their running back room. So they legitimately have 5 guys with Jones, Turbo Richard, Kai Robichaux. Who am I missing? That's 3. Trayshawn Ward. I'm missing someone else as well, but they have plenty of depth at that position where they can control the clock. And then obviously you have Tommy, who's an excellent athlete on when running the football. So yes, I think they can. I think the running game is going to be huge, because if they do open up that play action, you have the receiver room to go make some big plays, especially with a guy like Bradley on the outside. So yeah, I'm honestly expecting them to now make this an even closer game than many expected. I think the line is 17 right now, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to say they win it. But again, this is if nothing else, you cannot get blown out in this game on national television as the only game in town Monday night. You can lose, and this fan base won't freak out. But if it's 35-10 and the offense can't move the ball at all, well, then it's a problem already. But yeah, I expect them to keep it close, if not win the game. Just do not get blown out. And this has been treated like an NFL training camp. Bill O'Brien is treating this program like an NFL team. So it's a business trip for them. And I'm very, very curious to see, particularly on defense, how they come out, especially in that environment with a very pissed off Florida State team.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I think about with this game is that last year, this was a very close game. Was it a 3-point game last year?
Yeah, it was Tommy. It was ultimately, it was Tommy's coming out party for the most part.
Yeah. So I watched the replay of the FSU Georgia Tech game, and I felt like Florida State's always going to be fast. They're always going to be physical. They'll always be tough on defense. I don't think the Uiagalelei kid is a great quarterback. I just don't. So I think it's going to be close, and BC's going to be close enough late where they might be able to win it. Now, I'm not there yet in picking them to beat Florida State. I still think Florida State wins, but like you said, Kev, this is a showcase game. This is the only game in town. The town being United States. So like I don't think BC will get blown out, but especially they don't want to get blown out in a game like this. Like, not that it's ever good to get blown out, but with this audience, you really want to put on a show. This is another showcase for recruits, kids going elsewhere. Hey, come to Boston College. We were right there with Florida State. So yeah, I think it's going to be a close game, but I like Florida State and a 3 to 7 point win. We got a side view, John, here.
Yeah,
Yes.
John, we just had you in like 4 boxes there. That was creepy as hell.
Well, I mean, give us a second here, folks. We just want to make sure here we are experiencing some technical difficulties, but I think we're good. Can you guys see me?
Yep.
Yeah, you're good. Adam,
I
real
can
quick,
hear
just
you.
Adam, to your point too, or just to kind of expand on this one, you have a short week, and I know you have Duquesne at home, which shouldn't be an issue, but that flight home will be a lot better, and the preparation for that first home game will be a lot easier if you win this game, or at least represent yourself well. If you come home 35-10, 42-6, that's you now run the risk of letting Duquesne in that game at home next Saturday.
I think they'll be fine against Duquesne. I really feel like, it's almost funny. Like, to have Bill O'Brien's first game at BC be like on a Monday night where it's like in front of everybody, like that. That's just such an it's an opportunity for them to really jump into the forefront. Like, if they win this game, if they win this game, are you thinking 7-5? No, you're thinking 9-3 or 10-2.
I was gonna say, are they top 25 if they win?
They might be. These early polls are sort of just like guesswork, but that's as good a win as anybody. I'm sure Georgia Tech's in there, but yeah, I mean it's. I don't care if Florida State would be 0-2 with that loss, but beating Florida State is a huge feather in your cap, and they almost did it last year. They have to feel like this is a game they can win.
Yeah, and I think, look, it's hard, right? Because after that game on Saturday, I went on X and made the point that, hey, just a reminder, Boston College is built similar to this Georgia Tech team. They have experience back on the offensive line. They have multiple backs. They have a running quarterback. I'm not saying that they're going to go into Tallahassee and pull off the upset, but if Georgia Tech can beat these guys on a neutral site, Boston College certainly is going to be well coached enough and has enough talent to potentially go down there and beat them. Now, I know people are going to say it's inconceivable that Florida State will be 0-2. No, it's not. This Florida State team isn't half as good as last year's team. And I wasn't even a big Jordan Travis guy. So I think at the end of the day, Boston College can very well go down there and win that game. If they get off to a fast start, play mistake-free, get some early stops, they absolutely can win that game. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm, no, you're right. Florida State is almighty and there's no way they lose 2 in a row. And no, we're not being local honks. We're being realistic. Boston College, if they stay healthy and get good quarterback play, and we've said this all offseason, I think O'Brien becomes a factor now in terms of their overall success. They can win 8 games this year. This can be a good football team. This can be a team that's in the hunt in the ACC. So, you know what? No, I'm not going to sit here and back down and say, no, you're right. Florida State's going to be pissed and they're going to blow them out. They could. They very well could. Who knows? But I think at the end of the day, to Kevin's point, I do think that Boston College is equipped to go down there, certainly compete in this game, and possibly win it if they can keep it close into the 4th and beyond. All right, here, and again, I do want to apologize. We did have some technical issues. I hope we're coming through just fine. Guys, you can hear me fine, I'm assuming? All right.
Yeah, you're good.
We're operational. Let's shift gears here now and talk some high school football before we wrap up the show. Of course, high school football season kicks off in all 6 states next week. You got games in Massachusetts. You'll have games in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. Connecticut kicks off the following week. But Adam, I know that over the weekend you went on a little bit of a scrimmage tour. You had a chance to see 4 or 5 schools. Just your thoughts on what you saw and just some early thoughts on what we've seen and heard so far in high school football, specifically in Massachusetts, which is where we usually get our start. Don't worry, we are spreading out to the other states this week as well.
So the first scrimmage I went to started at 11, or actually started sooner than that, and I missed the first part of it. But it was Catholic Memorial in Fitchburg. Catholic Memorial, I mean, they always look good. They have tremendous size. They've got speed at the skill positions. They've got good quarterback play. They got a fast defense. Now, Fitchburg was a little overwhelmed. Fitchburg is going through some tough times. They had like somewhere between 20 and 25 total kids there. That's
not the program that Ray Cosenza once had.
Right. I mean, you're talking about one of the best programs in state history. Hopefully they can get it back on track. But with Catholic Memorial, I think what a lot of people want to know is how did Boston College commit senior running back Mekhi Dodd look? And the answer is he looked amazing. He's coming off a big injury last year that ended his season in the second game of the season. But he's so fast and he's big. He's like 6 foot 210 or 205, something like that in that area. So he can be a bruiser. He can be a speedster. He really has everything you're looking for in a running back. But again, he just hasn't had a lot of experience. He played great in that Mansfield game last year, the first game of the season. But after that, he got hurt. So he's looking to have a full season this year and really show what he's capable of. And if he's healthy, look out for CM. I know, newsflash, they're very good. Then I trekked over for about a 10-minute ride to Zavarian, which is very close to CM. And Zavarian had a try scrimmage with Andover and Tewksbury, and it was they usually do a passing scrimmage at that point for Zavarian, but they did it so they had some running. They had 3 running plays for every 10 plays. So with Zavarian, the thing that stuck out with Zavarian is their defense was fast. I mean, not just defensive ends Mike Amity and Dominic Funk. The whole defense flowed to the ball really well. It looked like the 5th game of the season for them on defense with the guys that they were playing. They just really get around. They fly to the ball. As for Andover, I really love Dominic Papa, the quarterback for Andover. Connor Atchison is another great player for them, a wide receiver, defensive back. And with Tewksbury, I was really impressed. Like Vinny Ciencio, I don't think I pronounced that right, but the quarterback for Tewksbury, he's a very good player. And Tewksbury has some size to him too. They don't always have that, but they had a couple big kids on the line. I think Tewksbury is a legitimate D4 state title contender. After what I saw, they're very good. So we'll see. I mean, out of those teams, I mean, there's some real talent in there, and I can't wait to see them during the season.
Yeah, and then of course another scrimmage you went to. You also checked out Brockton and St. John Shrewsbury.
Oh yeah,
they played in their annual scrimmage. Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's always a good scrimmage. It was on Friday, and but no, it was on Friday. St. John's is big. They've got some good players, and Brockton, I was really impressed with quarterback Marcio Semedo. I might have not pronounced that correct. I apologize. He's only a sophomore, but he really looks well put together. I'd say he's about maybe 6 foot 6'1", 215, 210 maybe. And he really puts some nice touch on the ball, and he's really made his release more compact. I saw him last year as a freshman, and he sort of had this wind up when he threw it. but now it's like it's real compact, and it's and he's really good. And I think that Brockton, look, it's not saying much when you say they'll be better than they were last year because they were 3-8. But Jailson Silva has done some great things with the program. The kids love him, and I think that Brockton is going to possibly have a winning record because some of the teams on their schedule have to replace a lot. A lot of those teams were really good last year, and I'm not necessarily thinking that's going to be the case this year. But look, Semedo's a good player. They got some good backs, a lot of good receivers. They have some depth to them, and another big offensive line there.
And we don't want to give out too much here because, of course, we are going to do our first high school preview show of the season this week, where we're going to do our preview of all 8 divisions in Massachusetts. We'll get into the other states as well. We kind of went overboard with the college preview. It's going to defeat the purpose of me and Barry doing our show this week, but we are still going to do the college preview show as well this week. All right, gentlemen, final thoughts here before we wrap it up.
Just enjoy the fact that football is back. I don't want to hear anybody saying, "Oh, it wasn't a good game." Hey, it was a game. It's football's back. Rejoice.
Yeah, to Adam's point, look, it's go time now. Get out to a college game, get out to a high school game. If you can, you won't be disappointed, especially by some of the college football in this area. I think it's severely underrated, and still looking for some writers in Connecticut. If you know anybody or want to cover high school football and some college in Connecticut, reach out to John, Adam, or myself. We're still looking.
Yeah, we really do want to have a bigger footprint in Connecticut, specifically with our high school coverage. So, again, if you're a freelancer or you're a young writer that wants to get into sports journalism, feel free to reach out to one of us, as Kevin said, and we'll be glad to take your resume and any samples you might have, and we'd love to have you. Same goes for the other states as well. We need more of a presence in Vermont. We need more of a presence in Maine. We cannot cover all 6 states as New England Football Journal without people in those states to help us out. We want to bring you the content, but we need the writers and the content creators to do that. So if you're interested in writing in Maine, we would love to have someone near Orono that can cover the Black Bears for us. We would like to have 2 or 3 people in the state that can cover a couple high school games a week for us. There's a lot of great programs up there that we want to cover in person. Unfortunately, there's only 3 of us, and we only have so many people. We can use all the help we can get. So if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in building your resume, then this is the place for you. And there is no better outlet in New England for you to get an opportunity to learn to be a writer, to learn to be a content creator than with New England Football Journal. We want your creativity. We want you to be a part of this. And so if you're interested, feel free to reach out. We would love to have you. Of course, we would like a resume and a writing sample because we also want to have people that can tell stories that represent our brand accurately. So again, if you're interested, feel free to reach out to myself, Kevin, or Adam. You can hit us up on X, or you can shoot us an email. If you want to hit us up on X, then email us. We'll figure it out. But again, we do need writers. We are pressed for time. Connecticut kicks off in a couple weeks. We want to be able to have a steady place, if you will, at the table when it comes to CIAC football. We can use some help down there. So if you know anybody, send them our way. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's show. For Kevin, for Adam, I'm John Sarianides. Till next week, peace.
See you.